What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a Machina deck profile. So I'm really excited for this one because you guys have been requesting this one like crazy on the channel, and I am super excited to bring this one to you guys because I've really made an interesting build of Machina for you guys. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below where we have all sorts of awesome rewards, like getting your name scripts for every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So this actually plays one of my favorite engines in the entire game, and that's actually the Train engine, which is just such a powerful OTK engine in the deck, and it just works so well because of Machina Citadel. So Machina Citadel is a 3-of that we're going to be playing in this deck because it has such an insanely good effect that it can't be normal summon or set. It must be special summoned by a card effect. And quick effect, you can target a machine monster you control, destroy that monster, and all monster your opponent controls with less attack than that monster or equal to that attack. And if a face-up earth machine monsters you control, except another copy of itself, is destroyed by battle or by card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. But being able to special summon a 3000 beat stick that can board wipe your opponent is a really, really good effect. I remember reading this card when it first came out and was like, wow, that's that's a big boy. That's a really good card. So then we play 3 copies of the original Machina Fortress. So Machina Fortress is a really neat card as well. It works very well with Citadel because Citadel has a really neat effect to be able to, well, this one's in the graveyard and can special summon it back, but this one requires you to actually discard cards from your hand to special summon it. So you have to discard a machine type monster whose total level equals 8 or more, which can be the Citadel, to be able to special summon your fortress from your hand. And it also has the ability that when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can target one card your opponent controls and destroy that target. And before resolving the opponent's monster's effect that targets this face-up card, you can look at your opponent's hand and discard a card from their hand. So if they decide to target this for any reason, you're going to be able to rip a card out of their hand, which is really, really good. We then play 3 copies of Machina Aerator. Aerator is really good because it lets you discard one of the Machina monsters, special summon this card from your hand, and then during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one of your Machina monsters you control, special summon from your deck a Machina monster with a different name and equal to or lower level than that monster. And if you do, destroy that targeted monster, which then can go off with your effect of Machina Citadel in the graveyard to special summon it back from the grave, which is really good. So this card is constantly coming back during your turn, during your opponent's turn. It's just constantly coming back, which helps you go into your rank 10 plays. We then play 3 copies of Machina Irradiator. This card is really good too. It's not my favorite personally. I love the Machina Fortress. I think that one's the best one in my opinion, but this one has the ability to discard one of the Machina monsters, special summon this card from your hand, and then you get to target one machine monster you control, special summon from your graveyard, one Machina monster with a different name that's equal to or lower the level than the monster, and if you do, you destroy the monster on the field. So I think the air one is better because air just special summons from deck, where this one just special summons from grave. So you have a little bit more utility with this one, but this one locks you during your opponent's turn that you can activate it, where this one can be either player's turn, which is really what's good about it, which is what helps you out with a lot of your plays. We then play 2 copies of Machina Metal Cruncher. Metal Cruncher is really good in the deck too. This card is one of your best normal summons in the entire deck because it has the ability that if you control no face-up monster or face-up cards, you can normal summon this card without tributing, but its original attack becomes 1800, and then it kind of Cosmo tin cans you if you've ever played Cosmos ever. When it's normal or special summon, you get to reveal 3 Earth Machine monsters from your deck. Your opponent randomly chooses one, and you add it to your hand, and then your opponent randomly adds one of them to your hand, and you shovel the rest back into the deck, which is a really good effect just to be able to grab you a card from the deck. We then play a single copy of Machina Megaform. I play 1 Megaform because it's easy to go into with your fortress, because you tribute this card to special summon 1 Machina monster from your hand or deck, except another copy of itself. And if a face-up Machina fortress you control is sent to the graveyard while this card is in your graveyard, then you can banish this card, or banish that Machina fortress from your grave to special summon this card from your hand. So it kind of replaces your Machina fortress if it does get destroyed or sent to the grave at all. We then play 3 copies of Machina Gearframe. Gearframe is insanely good because when it's normal summon, you get to add a Machina monster, except another copy itself from your deck to your hand, which is the big effect of this card card. It is a union monster, so you can equip it to other monsters, but you never really do that. It's really its normal summon effect where you're going to get to add from deck to hand is the big thing that you're going off with in this card anyways. So that's the only real effect that matters. We then play 2 copies of Machina Possessed Storage. Possessed Storage is kind of neat. It's kind of like they made dark Machina monsters like they were corrupted by another machine, which is kind of neat. That if this card is normal or special summon, you get to target 1 Machina monster in your graveyard, except another copy of itself, and special summon it in phase of defense, but it cannot activate its effects this turn. And you can target one of the Machina monsters you control, and 1 spell and trap your opponent controls, return that target to your hand. Return both targets to the hand, which is pretty good, just be able to shuffle stuff or put stuff back in the hand. And then for the last Machina monster that we're playing currently, we're playing a single copy of Resalvager. Resalvager is kind of like a hand trap that has the ability to quick effect, send it from your hand to the grave or field to the graveyard. And you can target a Machina monster and it gains 1200 attack until the end of the turn, which is pretty good. But the really good effect about this card is when a Machina monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, while this card's in your graveyard, you can add this card back to your hand, but you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. So it's a pretty good effect to just be able to constantly get it back and use its effects over and over and over again to gain that 1200, which is why I play it as a one of. I might drop it when the other one comes out soon, but for now, I still feel like it's a good one of. So that's it for the Machina monsters. Let's get into the trains. So for the trains, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Heavy Freight Train Decacrane. Decacrane is really good because it has a really neat effect to be able to special summon it from your hand, that if an Earth Machine type monster is normal or special summon to your field, then you can special summon this card from your hand, but its original attack and defense become halved. That's not that big of a deal. It helps you with Link plays, it helps you with XZ plays. This card is just overall really good. And if this card is detached from an XZ monster and sent to the graveyard to activate a monster effect, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a really good effect just to be able to pop something on the field. We then play 3 copies of Super Express Train. Super Express Train is really good too because it can special summon itself from your hand if all monsters on your side of the field are Earth Machines, which all your Machina monsters are Earth Machines except for the Machina or the Machine Resalvager and Machine Storage. So basically, these are the only dark ones that you kind of have to worry about, but the other ones are really, really easy to be able to get out onto your side of the field. Because if you just summon something like an Irradiator or Fortress or Air, you can get them out on your side of the field and they are Earth, so you can summon this and use it as link material. It also says during the end phase, if this card's in your graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can target a machine monster in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, so it helps out getting your machine monsters back to your hand as well. We then play for the last 2, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Flying Pegasus Railroad Stampede. Railroad Stampede helps me with my XZ plays because it has the ability that this card, if this card's normal special summon, you can target an Earth Machine monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position, but its effects are negated. And then it also has the ability that you can target 1 of the machine monsters you control, and this card's level becomes the same level as that monster, or that level becomes the same level as this monster. You kind of get to pick, which is pretty good just to be able to kind of level manipulate to get into the exact XZ monster you need, which is super, super helpful on the deck. So that's it for the that's it for all of your trains. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Urgent Schedule. Urgent Schedule is really good in the deck too. You really need it if you're going to be playing a train package in here, because it has the ability if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower and 1 level 5 or higher Earth Machine monster from your deck and defense position, but their effects are negated and you can't declare an attack the turn you activate this effect, except with machine monsters. And if this set card on this field is sent to the graveyard, then you get to add a level 2 machine monster from your deck to your hand, which is a really good effect to be able to kind of search the exact machine monster that you need. We play 2 copies of Pot of Desires because there's not a particular card in this deck that if it gets hit that I'm kind of like, oh no, I banished 2 copies of my Gear Frame, I banished 2 copies of Fortress, and not really worried about it with this deck because there's so many extenders in the deck that it's totally fine. We then play 1 copy of Defense Perimeter. Defense Perimeter is really, really good. So this card I just feel like to me is a one of. I've played it at 2 before, but I really feel like 1 is fine. That when you control level 7 or higher machine monster, your opponent cannot target level 6 or lower machine monster you control for attacks, and also your opponent cannot target them with card effects. But the really good effect is if a face-up machine monster you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can target a machine monster in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, so it's really good at getting machine monsters back to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Machina Redeployment. Redeployment is probably the best spell in the entire deck because It has the ability that you can discard a card to add 2 Machina monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, or discard a Machina monster to add 2 or more Machina cards with different names from your deck to your hand, which is why I play this as a one of, because I can search it really easily off the copy of redeployment if I need it. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we are playing 2 copies of Overdrive. Overdrive is just too good not to play. Even though it's a trap, it's still really good because it lets you target a machine monster you control, special summon 1 Machina monster with the different name from your hand or deck, and if you do, destroy the targeted monster on the field. And you manage this card from your graveyard to target 3 of your machine type monsters that are banished or in your graveyard and shuffle them back into the deck, and then you get to draw a card. So it's really good at tagging your machine monsters out to be able to deal with your opponent's cards. And if you look at the lore, actually, that's the monster that's corrupted some of the Machina monsters, which is kind of neat because it makes me think of Shaddolls a little bit, which is kind of cool. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Juggernaut Libby because it is the big boss monster of the entire extra deck that basically lets you attack multiple times and goes all the way up to like 6,000 attack and can attack multiple times, which is absolutely insane. It's really easy to summon as well because you can overlay it on top of a level or rank 10 machine monster, which is super helpful because it helps with your train engine. I'm playing just a single copy of number 81. Number 81 is really good in the deck too, but number 81 to me just feels like you need 1 copy of it in the deck because you can once per turn during either player's turn detach a material from this card and target a phase of monster on the field, and that monster is unaffected by every other card effect, which is really good because you're just going to be able to protect so many different cards with this card. We then play 2 copies of Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. Gustav Max burns your opponent for 2,000 life points for each detach, which is really good. Now I will say this as well. The reason I play the 2 Juggernaut Libbys is because I feel like I can go into them pretty easily, but usually you're only going to need 1. And 1 card I'm not playing in this extra deck is a copy of True King of All Calamities. If you do want to play True King of All Calamities, you can drop a single copy of Juggernaut Libby to be able to play a single copy of True King of All Calamities. It's just a suggestion because you can Metal Cruncher with your Railroad Stampede and make it pretty easy, but I just didn't feel like I was going into it enough because it's kind of a very situational to be able to draw those 2 cards in my hand at any given time. We then play a same copy of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. AA Zeus is just really good anytime Xyz monsters are present because it can board wipe everything, which is really good, and I love playing this card as a one of in here. We then play the same copy of Dingirsu. Dingirsu is pretty easy to go into as well, and it protects your cards, which is why it's a super good one of in here, and why I love playing this card in this deck. We then play a single copy of Access Code Talker. You can drop this out if you want to play Boral Sword or Boral Load if you want to. I just really like Access Code Talker because it gives me multiple pops on the field. 1 copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is really easy to make in this deck because it's really easy to just summon a lot of monsters on your side of the field, make Appaloosa, and be able to have multiple negates. 1 copy of Unicorn to be able to spin stuff. Phoenix to pop spells and traps. I play a single copy of Double-Headed Anger Knuckler. This card's really kind of neat because during your main phase, you can send 1 monster from your hand or field to the graveyard and then target a level 10 Earth Machine monster in your graveyard and special summon a defense position, but you can negate its effects. But it's really good to be able to just summon it onto your side of the field and be able to make whatever you particularly need and get your rank 10s back on your side of the field, or level 10s back on your side of the field so you can go into Juggernaut Libby. You play the same copy of the Bujin Link monster. This card helps me make Xyz plays like you wouldn't believe because it can copy the levels of 2 monsters, which is kind of neat because if this card is link summoned, you can special summon 2 monsters with the same level, 1 from your hand and 1 from your graveyard, which is kind of neat because if I have a train stuck in my hand, I can summon it to the field, or if I have a Citadel stuck in my hand, I can put it on the field and be able to go into a copy of Juggernaut Libby really easily. Union Carrier because it just helps out a lot, and a single copy of IP. IP helps out a lot too because you can go into this and then go into Unicorn during your opponent's turn, or Appaloosa depending on which one you want to go for. So that's it for this deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really cool deck to play with. I hope you guys give this deck a try. It was actually a structure deck, and it's relatively budget outside of, say, the access code, which I said earlier that you can drop this for a Boral Sword. The AA Zeus you kinda need, but it can be dropped if need be for True King of All Calamities to make the deck really budget, but it's totally up to you how you play it. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.